We all see the chaos, but what if we're asking the wrong question? What if the problem isn't why we're so divided, but who profits from keeping us that way? What if America's most valuable new commodity isn't data or technology, but our own outrage?
Tonight we explore a dystopian world, manipulated by algorithms, corporations, and science. Here, your imagination reflects through an endless labyrinth of circuits, lurking just beneath the surface of the binary mirror.
This is an investigation into the monetization of the rage economy, a vast modern phenomena entrenched in a culture of violence. What follows is an essay synthesizing publicly documented research on how our media ecosystem learned to farm human anger for profit. 20 years ago, Michael Moore's Bowling for Columbine diagnosed what he called a culture of fear. According to his research, American media had created a 24/7 anxiety machine that made citizens perceive threats everywhere: killer bees, strangers, their own neighbors. Canadians own guns at a similar rate, but lacked this media apparatus. Moore concluded the fear was the product, and he was right. But he was documenting the early stages of something that would evolve into something far more profitable and far more dangerous. But here's what's changed. Fear is either passive or aggressive. According to behavioral psychology research, fear responses are fight or flight, to avoid, to isolate, or attack. A scared person buys a gun, locks their door, or withdraws. But according to internal research from Facebook leaked by whistleblower Frances Haugen in 2021, anger generates between 5 to 7 times more engagement than neutral content. Anger is active. An angry person doesn't just lock their door, they seek an enemy, they share, they click, they donate, they organize. Somewhere between Moore's diagnosis in 2002 and today, the media ecosystem discovered that rage is more valuable commodity than fear. Welcome to the rage economy. This outrage engine isn't a conspiracy. It's the convergence of 3 market forces that learned independently and then in concert to harvest human despair. The first is partisan media economics. According to a 2019 RAND Corporation study on the truth decay, trust in media collapsed along partisan lines over the past 2 decades. Audiences now select outlets not for information, but for validation. The business model shifted from informing to inflaming. The second is political fundraising. According to publicly available data analysis from ActBlue and WinRed, fear-based, anger-based fundraising emails outperform policy-focused emails by factor of 3 to 1 in donation rates. The third is algorithmic amplification. According to multiple studies published in Nature and Science between 2021 and 2023, social media algorithms prioritize content that generates engagement, which correlates most strongly with the outrage and moral indignation. These aren't isolated systems, they form a self-reinforcing loop. But the engine isn't just economic, it's neurochemical. Research into behavioral neuroscience, outrage triggers a dopamine response in the brain's reward center. When we encounter something that violates our moral framework, we experience a rush, not dissimilar to other addictive substances. Social media platforms have engineered an addictive feedback loop. You see content that outrages you. You feel compelled to enrage, to share, to comment, to correct. The algorithm rewards this engagement by showing you more of what made you angry. Your tribal identity hardens and the cycle repeats. This isn't accidental. According to whistleblower testimony, internal documents and platform engineers understand these mechanics. The question isn't whether they know, it's whether their profit motives outweigh the social cost. According to the RAND Corporation's multi-year study, we're experiencing what they call truth decay, the diminishing role of facts in public discourse, combined with an increasing disagreement about the objective facts themselves. Here's how it works. When audiences select media outlets that validate rather than inform, those outlets face market pressure to deliver not truth, but what we call outrage discourse. content engineered to confirm the audience's existing worldview while maximizing their emotional arousal. The result isn't just polarization, it's the fracturing of shared reality. According to Pew Research data, Americans now live in fundamentally different information ecosystems, depending on their political affiliation. We don't just disagree about the solutions, we disagree about what the problem that exists. Here's where the manipulation gets personal. According to Facebook whistleblower documents released in 2021, internal research showed that anger and outrage generated between 5 to 7 times more engagement than other emotional responses. The algorithm learns you. It creates a version of yourself made entirely of your own data, your clicks, your pauses, your scrolls. This digital twin knows what makes you angry better than you do. It curates a perfectly personalized feed of your own rage and nostalgia, selling it back to you one click at a time. You think you're consuming content, you're actually being thought harvested. The engine requires fuel. According to the Small Arms Survey in 2023, American civilians possess approximately 393 million firearms, roughly 46% of all civilian-owned guns in the world, despite being only 4% of the global population. This creates what military strategists would call an environment of elevated kinetic potential. In simple terms, America is uniquely armed, uniquely angry, and saturated in media that profits from this combination. According to the CDC data for 2023, approximately 48,000 Americans die from gun violence each year. That's roughly 1 death every 11 minutes. But here's the critical distinction. This is not civil war. This is not organized conflict. It's the baseline operating cost of the engine running at normal capacity. This is what a society looks like when rage has been successfully monetized. There's a cost that's harder to quantify but perhaps more corrosive than the death toll. Constant exposure to tribal conflict, the daily diet of outrage, the algorithmic reinforcement of us versus them, that conditions us to see fellow citizens not as people but as enemies. According to research in social psychology, this is called affective polarization, not just disagreeing with the other side policies, but experiencing visceral dislike and distrust for them as humans. According to Pew data tracking this over decades, this metric has skyrocketed. We have traded the universal human need for belonging and connection for the cheap thrill of tribalism. We've traded hearts for swords and the engine for profits, and from everyday exchange of kindness. Other wealthy democracies have faced similar moments of crisis involving mass violence. Their responses reveal something crucial. Policy action is possible when the political will exists to implement it, when nations choose to prioritize resolution over the monetization of outrage. On April 28, 1996, in Port Arthur, Tasmania, a gunman killed 35 people in Australia's worst mass shooting. According to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation archives, within 12 days, Conservative Prime Minister John Howard announced a national gun buyback program. He faced massive political resistance from his own party, from rural communities, and from gun owners. He enacted it anyways. Politics as usual versus a moment of decisive action, he chose the action. Checking Australian government records over the next year, more than 650,000 firearms were collected and destroyed. According to multiple studies published in the JAMA over the following decades, gun homicides dropped by more than 50% in the years following. Mass shooting events defined as incidents with 4 or more deaths effectively vanished for 25 years. The data is clear. When a nation chooses collective action over individual paralysis, violence can decline. Now consider the American timeline. According to documented events, Columbine in 1999, Virginia Tech in 2007, Sandy Hook in 2012, Pulse in 2016, Parkland in 2018, Uvalde in 2022, and over 586 in 2024, and 341 shootings in 2025 so far. According to the congressional voting records, federal legislative responses have been minimal to non-existent. According to the Giffords Law Center tracking state-level legislation, the response has been increasing divergence. Some states restrict access, others have expanded it. The same crisis met not with solutions, but with more fuel for the engine, because in America, division is more profitable than a solution. This brings us to the uncomfortable conclusion. We are playing a game that is rigged. It's designed to be addictive and destructive. It profits from our worst impulses and our deepest fears. The only winning move is to not play the game. This is not a call for apathy or complacency. It's a call for a different kind of rebellion, one that starts with the self, with recognizing that our attention and our anger are the fuel that keeps the engine running. The most radical act available to us is to break the addiction, to consciously choose empathy over outrage, to see the human behind the wheel. This requires the psychologists call cognitive diffusion, the ability to observe your emotional reactions without being controlled by them. When the digital construct serves you content designed to make you furious, to notice, I'm being manipulated, this is a product. This internal rebellion is the first and most critical step. You can't starve the engine if you're still feeding it with your rage. Once the internal choice is made, the external work can become possible. Increasing your media literacy, diversifying informational sources, seeking primary sources rather than commentary on top of biased commentary, engaging in local content, attending town halls, joining the community groups, and supporting structural reform. According to researchers studying democratic resilience, systems can be designed to reward collaboration over conflict, but this requires sustained civic engagement, not just outrage cycles. This is how you starve the engine, by denying it our attention and our anger. The rage economy is real, it's profitable, and it's demonstrably harmful, but it's not unstoppable. This is made of human choices, which means different choices remain possible. The real question that remains is simple. Will you feed the system?
Guns are woven into the fabric of the American culture. Guns have become our culture, particularly with the dominance of television and movies in the 60s and 70s. Video games are just the latest iteration. Generations alive today fought in wars. Their children played with green plastic army men on the floor. Baby boomers played cowboys and Indians outside. And they came inside at night to watch Justice Served by the Rifleman and the Lone Ranger. We watched Have Gun, Will Travel on primetime television. We watched Wanted, Dead or Alive. Walt Disney's Davy Crockett, he proudly carried his rifle, Old Betsy, everywhere. And the interest in cap guns and BB guns waned only as paintball guns, Nerf guns, and video game consoles came into popularity. You know, at first, our weapon-carrying heroes had complex personalities, and they tried to avoid violence. Marshal Matt Dillon from Gunsmoke, Batman, Indiana Jones. But soon, these weapon-carrying heroes were replaced by action heroes. And action heroes, they don't wait for justice, they seek vengeance. Rambo, Dirty Harry, John Wick. On the big screen, guns became everyday tools of survival. And I think without realizing it, Americans collectively came to believe that a gun was the answer to every conflict. Our human heroes became anyone with the biggest, fastest, and most destructive gun. Guns became our heroes. Violence in films has doubled since the 1950s, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. And now, opening scenes require seemingly endless ammunition to kill characters we have never even met. Baby boomers and Gen Xers, we perfected America's gun culture. But millennials and Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, you have inherited it. For our first 200 years, gun owners and non-gun owners alike viewed guns as dangerous but controllable tools.
Of his social standing, and he was desperate. And into that desperation comes the gun manufacturer and his advertiser, saying, here is a way to recoup your manhood, to recoup your power, to recoup your toughness, have a gun. And not just have it, work really hard to get the right to carry it in the open, where everyone can see what a tough guy you are, possessed of this deadly weapon. And that's what advertisers do. Their job is not to investigate the morality or not. Their job is to sell whatever it is their client manufactures, and they figured out how to attach gun purchase to a desperate need of a whole segment of the population, a need that could not be, they can't get a good job, they're not available anymore. They can't get an adequate income, it's not available anymore. But they can go to the nearby Walmart and buy as many guns as they can fit into whatever cabinet they keep them in, and make themselves feel as though there's something that they have. There's something where they're still able to express what has been taken away from them. So for me, I see this as a catastrophic coming together of the profit drive of the gun companies, the advertising industry, and the catastrophe for adult white workers that the last 50 years has created. By the way, that's the same reason why you get things like the replacement theory that everyone's talking about, the imaginary QAnon conspiracy that's taking away from me, the white adult, perhaps also Christian worker, all that I was, in order to replace me with a Chinese worker or a Latin American immigrant or whoever it is that their particular conspiracy is going to replace them with. Look, the very word, I'm being replaced, I'm being pushed away, and I want to get it back, and I won't have that taken from me. I have now found a way to fix my problem, keep out the immigrant, buy the gun. And, against that, you'd have to have a very sophisticated, self-conscious politics to offer these people an alternative way to understand what happened to them and to deal with it. And the left could do that. The left could say, you're not the victim of a poor immigrant from Latin America, and you're not the victim of the Chinese. You're the victim of a system that puts profit number one and works in the way. And we could tell them that story, and then the conclusion would be, you need a different system.
They're not contradicting their values. You must understand, they're not betraying their values. They are acting on their values with consistency and continuity. Committing massacres against innocent civilians does not trouble their conscience, any more than you stepping on a bug troubles your conscience. They don't see anything to feel guilty about. They feel that they've done something good. You have to understand this, because if you don't, you will severely and dangerously underestimate their danger. And you'll make the fatal mistake of believing that you can ever appeal to their sense of morality, that you can ever appeal to their conscience. And you make the catastrophic mistake of trusting them, or trusting their intentions. And wallahi, there are tens of millions of their victims crying out from their graves, telling you not to trust them. Just like someone watching a horror movie and shouting at the screen, telling the main character, don't go down that dark alley. If you could hear the voices of their millions of victims, they would tell you exactly what's going to happen to you if you listen to them and if you trust them. If you're Muslim, or you're not white, or you're not rich, you need to recognize that they have zero moral hesitation about killing you. Yes, whether you live outside of America or whether you live inside of America, it's the same to them. The worst thing you can do is ever underestimate this reality. Listen, just like with an individual, you can learn what their values are by what their actions are, much better than by what their words are. People can tell you all kinds of things about what their values are, what they believe, and so on, what their morals are. But their actions, their deeds will tell you the truth. You don't know anything about what they believe by their words alone. You have to see to what extent their actions align with their words, because people do things that they believe are morally acceptable. Now, sure, that doesn't mean that people always act in accordance with their conscience. People can slip up. There can be aberrations. We're human beings. But the actions that someone commits habitually, regularly, routinely, with consistency, this is what they believe.
Or triumphant. And such a world clearly has no hope of survival. On the contrary, he desires to transcend the world, to achieve total sovereignty by negating fellow human beings, which he sees as representing a peculiar kind of hell. Armory's point is important. A sadistic society is about collective self-destruction. It is the apotheosis of a society deformed by overwhelming experiences of loss, alienation, and stasis. The only way left to affirm yourself in a failed society is to destroy. Johann Huizinga, in his book Waning of the Middle Ages, noted that the dissolution of medieval society provoked what he called the violent tenor of life. Today, this violent tenor of life drives people to carry out wanton police murders, evict families, court-ordered bankruptcies, the denial of Medicare to the sick, suicide bombings, and mass shootings. Sadism imparts the rush and pleasure, often with heavy sexual overtones, which lures us towards what Sigmund Freud called the death instinct. The instinct to destroy all forms of life, including our own. When enveloped by a death-saturated world, death, ironically, is embraced as the cure.